Prem, you are very tireless, and I kind of can't believe it that they still call on you at these State Department press conferences. We're going to take a look at you questioning Matthew Miller about the killing of the American, as everyone in the media like to emphasize this, Turkish-American woman, Ayşenur, who was killed in the West Bank. Here you are asking him about it, and let's take a listen.
And finally, just on what you've said, that the U.S. is urging the Israeli forces to change its rules of engagement after Ayşenur's killing. Of course, there's also World Central Kitchen worker Jacob Flickinger, the teenagers Mohammed Kadur, Tawfiq Abdul-Jabbar, our journalist colleague Shireen Abu Akleh, peace activist Rachel Corrie, 40,000 Palestinians, which of course you've condemned as well, the killing of them. The logic would follow that the U.S. has unconditionally funded a military with evidently insufficient rules of engagement up to this point. So is there any U.S. reflection on that idea?
The U.S. reflection on it is that Israel needs to change its policies, and we have made that quite clear. When it comes to the World Central Kitchen strike, we made clear that they need to change their deconfliction measures and worked with the UN to get new deconfliction measures in place. Now, those aren't perfect. We continue to see strikes that result in the death of humanitarian workers. We continue to see strikes in Gaza that lead to the tragic deaths of civilians. As you know, it is a very difficult place in which to conduct a military campaign because you have a terrorist organization that embeds itself and hides itself behind civilians, which is why it's the United States that is at the forefront of pushing for a ceasefire. And when it comes to actions in the West Bank, it's the United States that's pushing for changes to the Israeli rules of engagement.
As you point out, those attacks have still continued. So if these urgings don't continue, will there not be a consideration to condition weapons?
We continue to work to get the best outcome possible, and we believe the best outcome possible when you look in Gaza is a ceasefire. So and that's why. Hold on, let me just answer the question. And it's why we continue to work with Egypt and with Qatar to get a ceasefire over the line. Ultimately, we think that is the thing that would bring an alleviation to the suffering of the Palestinian people. Not any of the other steps we hear bandied about from time to time, but a ceasefire that brings a lasting end to the war. And when it comes to changes in the West Bank, it's the changes that we've proposed with others. Kylie, go ahead.
Wow, how come he keeps calling on you? You are very polite. You're very polite. You're not confrontational at all. But what made you ask that question? What did you think of his response?
What had prompted that question was earlier in the conference he had said, and I think this is something he was starting to get at throughout the week, is the idea that the killing of Ayşenur Eygi in the West Bank showed that Israeli forces were needing sort of an increase of standards of engagement, essentially, and the U.S. was urging for a change to those standards of engagement. And so that question was pretty much saying, okay, you're saying this, given all of these killings, specifically against Americans, let alone tens of thousands of Palestinians up to this point, that suggestion would imply that given the U.S. has unconditionally supported Israel largely up to this point, and given the idea that Israel needs to update its standards of investigations, or engagements rather, that means that up to this point, if Israel has had a sort of insufficient level of standards, the U.S. has been supporting an insufficient military unconditionally. And so that was sort of the inspiration for that question. I think it is interesting that the State Department is more openly saying that idea that, this embodies an Israeli military that is insufficient. But as many have said over and over again, words only mean so much. I mean, in the same way that it seemed like there was a sort of rhetorical and meaningful shift when this administration started saying the word ceasefire. You saw in that clip. Now the word ceasefire is kind of used as a word to sort of bat away ideas that perhaps there should be conditioning of aid to Israel. So there's kind of this continual kind of appropriation of sliding goalposts, not an actual substantial consequence of those shifting goalposts, but allowing them to shift in such a way that then the language can be used to sort of communicate movement while actually not changing policy. So I think that was an answer that kind of illustrated how this administration has continued to do that, if that makes sense.